Today I want to be talking about principle before power. We see in the last of Exodus the power of God coming down into the tabernacle that has been built, and it's a wonderful thing, and God begins to lead and His presence is in the tabernacle. It's an awesome thing to see the power of God inhabiting a place, to see it living in the tabernacle. It's a wonderful thing to see it abiding there. However, as you go through the book of Exodus, you'll see that there are ways and things that they had to do in order to house the power of God. We take a look from Exodus all the way, chapter 1, all the way up through chapter number 19, that God basically gives them deliverance, He gives them miracles, He gives them all these different things. They're living on promises that He's given them, all these different things. But all of a sudden in chapter number 20 we see a change. Chapter number 20 we see the thou shalt nots. All of a sudden we see principle being put in. It's not just a promise, but now it's principle. Alright, so God begins to tell them, this is how I want you to live. And I believe it's in chapter number 24, God brings up Moses for his sixth ascension up the mountain. In this time, He brings Moses up to give him the law, the 10 Commandments, and to begin to instruct him on how to house the power of God. So all this time, the Israelites have went through 19 chapters here of, God, I'm hungry, well, I'll feed you. God, I'm thirsty, water out of the rock. Whatever you need, miracles, whatever you need, I'm promising you of things of the future. It's awesome to have the promise, but what we have to understand that in order to get the power, we have to go through chapters 20 through 24. We have to go through the law. We have to learn to live under before we can be an overcomer. So we see here in chapter number 20 through 24, all of a sudden, we see law, Moses goes up, and then the people start complaining. They start saying, well, you know, Moses is taking too long up there. All right, so they begin to make a golden calf. We're okay with serving God as long as we're receiving promises and miracles and all these different things. But whenever God begins to put law into our life and principle into our life, and when we have to start living a certain way, all of a sudden we don't want that God. We want to make another God. You see what I'm saying? So here we see all the way up to chapter number 19. They're fine with living with Him, living off of miracles, living off of promise. But when principle comes into the picture, all of a sudden they want another God. But what they didn't realize is whenever they were complaining about Moses being up there for too long, their leader being up on this mountain for too long, what they didn't realize is that Moses was up on top of this mountain receiving instruction about the shewbread, about the lamb, about how the tabernacle was going to be built. He was receiving instruction on how to house the power of God. Hallelujah. So what you have to understand is that after the principle, he receives the instruction. After the instruction, he receives the power of God. In this time, God was telling them, I'm giving you a law. I'm giving you instruction. You'll read in chapter, I believe, 21, or no, I think it was 24. You'll see where God instructs them to give. It's about them giving what they have to build this tabernacle. They're fine with everything going on, with living on miracles, living on promise, but when they have to give, when they have to live by principle, when the law comes into play, all of a sudden they want something different. But I want you to understand something here today. You won't receive the power of God. It cannot inhabit the tabernacle until you begin to live under that law, until you begin to live under principle. So don't expect the power of God until you live by the principles that God's laid down for us.